Welcome back to the Barca Breakdown. My name is Adam. I'm here with Pablo Wools-Blanco at Pablo WB Official on Twitter. How are you doing, Pablo?
Yeah, I'm doing very well, thank you. It's good times for Barcelona. I'm quite excited to talk today. And thank you for having me on, man. Really appreciate it.
No problem. I mean, it is good times, right? We haven't lost in this year. We are 11 points clear of Real Madrid. And we, of course, like we're going to talk about today, this huge Manchester United Europa League tie is coming up. And it's not the optimal setup for me, to be honest, with the first leg at the Camp Nou and the second leg at Old Trafford. I'd much prefer it to be reversed and to have Barca, at home in the second leg. But it is what it is, and we just got to really put away our chances against Man U at the Camp Nou this Thursday. And so I just wanted to start and let people hear from you and talk about the current form of Barca and how you see us performing and heading into this game.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I think everyone agrees Barcelona are in a very good moment. I think I saw a stat yesterday: 15 wins out of our last 16 games is, pretty incredible. I think we've actually won every single game in 2023, if you include the shootout against Betis, for example. So Barcelona are on superb form. I think probably the best team in Europe on form. Almost a shame we're not in the Champions League anymore. I think a lot of people agree on that. But yeah, I think Xavi has found a way to get this Barcelona team that he planned in the summer playing to perfection. I think defensively, the transition the team has made has been unbelievable, actually, when you consider that Barcelona not long ago were so weak defensively and conceded so many goals, and it was such an issue. You've got Araujo, Kounde, Christensen and Balde back there has made all the difference. And, we keep a clean sheet almost every game. Midfield works so hard. Of course, there's talent in there and in attack too. But altogether now, Xavi's found this team. He's found the system. And Barcelona look like a real, European great again, in my opinion. So Barcelona coming to this game against Man U. Man U, a team who are also doing very well this season, actually, under Ten Hag, much better than they've been doing in previous seasons. But I think Barcelona come in as slight favourites. You mentioned the home leg being first for Barcelona. Slight issue we can maybe get onto later. But Barcelona on paper are favourites for this tie and do come in a really good moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all see it, right? And off the top, like you mentioned, defensively, like I think it's 16 clean sheets in 21 games, 7 goals allowed in 21 games. I mean, it's really absurd. And like you said, had Araujo been healthy, we had Balde at the time and not started Marcus Alonso in the Champions League, maybe we would still be there. But it is what it is. And I totally agree with you. And I think there's no way to dispute that Barca are on the tip-top form that they could have.
Yeah.
I think, I just worry because I'm a worrywart, and I think all of us Barca fans are, right? That's one of the hard parts about covering these big Europa League ties is like, I don't know if you know this, Pablo, last year I was planning and I went to Barcelona to watch the last 2 league games, one in Madrid and one in Barca. And I was hoping to see the Europa League final, but of course, Erik Garcia, that big penalty in the second minute, you think even further back to Bayern, Anfield, Roma, all the nightmares we don't want to talk about. And we do just have a little bit of a worrying sense, right? That like maybe we are getting hoodwinked by the fact that we're beating up on La Liga teams, and especially in a season when the financial regulations have made La Liga a weaker side than the Premier League. I do worry about us just dominating La Liga, but then coming up against a Man U team who are doing really well. I think I was most scared of Man U like right after that Man City game when they won with a pretty controversial offside call that wasn't called on Rashford. I'm a Man City fan, by the way, so I definitely think he was. I definitely think he was off. And then, you go through what they've been doing, though, and it hasn't been the best, month and a half of football from them, right? They lost to Arsenal. They just drew Leeds midweek, and then they beat Leeds just yesterday, actually 2-0. And so I'm a little bit overconfident. I feel like I'm not like actually having that normal anxiety I'd have before these big games. And so for you, I mean, how do you expect Man U to come out? What do you think is going to be what do you think are the players on their team that are going to be the most threatening to Barca?
Yeah, I mean, no, you make good points about Barcelona's Champions League exit. It's frustrating, but that's just the way it is. I think Barca didn't line up with Kounde, didn't line up with Araujo. I think Christensen was out for a few. I mean, the first Bayern defeat was a pain. And then the 2 Inter games were just felt like the years passed. And I mean, at that time, I was saying, yeah, Barcelona are good now, but clearly we're not there yet. Coming up against Man U, and like you say, it's a different ball game because you're right. Barcelona have been very good in La Liga, but now the test comes in Europe, and I think that's always been the case in the last few seasons, actually. I do think Barcelona have been very good, no matter what. I don't think it's just been because we're playing La Liga teams. I think we just have been that good. But Barcelona will be coming up against different sorts of forwards in La Liga to what they're going to be coming up against Manchester United on these 2 Thursday night games. So, for example, last night against Villarreal, there's no one in that team, for example, in attack who you think, they're going to cause us huge, huge problems. They're all players Barcelona should be able to deal with, and they do. And the same for Betis, even Atletico Madrid. So, all those teams who are very good teams, like Villarreal last night played very well, but they're not necessarily going to threaten Barcelona like Man U will. So, Man U, I think, aren't favourites, but I think that will suit them. I've watched an awful lot of Man U this season, and they've been so much better under Ten Hag. I think he himself, a bit like what Xavi's done, is performing a bit of a revolution actually at Man U. I think they're in their best moment now in what I'd say 5, 6, 7 years actually as a football club in terms of the direction they're going. Honestly, I think even if they don't win titles or anything, just the feeling around the way that the club is going or where it's going, I think is totally different to what we've seen. So this is a real blockbuster clash for like a knockout qualification game in the Europa League. Like, we're not even round of 16 yet, are we? So this is huge. And it's 2 extremely informed teams, probably top 5, top 10 for sure in Europe. So Man U are going to pose Barca a different threat. I think they can play well without the ball. Lissandro Martinez has been superb, I think, for them this season. They've got Casemiro in there. I know they've got a few injuries to the likes of Eriksen, but I think we know up front that, to answer your question, Marcus Rashford is the one that we're looking at. I think they've got other players around him. They've played him on the left, they've played him centrally, but he scores at least 1 goal every game, really. So if Barca can keep Rashford quiet, I think they'll have a very, very good chance of progressing.
Well, the good news for us is that I believe Lissandro is suspended for the first leg.
Yes.
Which should be good for Barca. And I think, interesting, I agree with you, right? Rashford is the player I'm looking out for the most. And I also always, I hate Casemiro, just to be honest, right? This is the Barca breakdown. I don't like the guy. So I'm sure none of you do too either, but he's a good player and he's shown a lot of quality already for Man U. So he's always a player, especially with, if we deploy Kessie as a double pivot and Frenkie, I could see him causing them some problems in the middle because he's a level up from the other midfielders they're playing so far in La Liga. The interesting part for me is, you talk about Villarreal, you talk about, them lacking the quality that's really going to hurt us. Chukwueze has had a few big goals against Barca in the last few seasons here. But when I think about, him scoring or any other, Vinicius, other wingers in La Liga going crazy, the thing that I always clicks with me is that a lot of those fears come from a backline of Jordi Alba, right, defending on that wing. It comes from Lenglet and Piqué in center, Sergio Roberto in the backline, Busquets is our CDM. And really what we're seeing here is a totally new team, right? We don't have any of those players. I mean, Busi would be starting, of course, if he was healthy, but he's not even there. And so that's one thing that does give me some sort of hope, is that, we've really deconstructed all those teams that have the negative baggage from years behind. And we're really putting up a new defense, like you said, Balde, Christensen, Araujo, Kounde, Frenkie in that pivot spot along with Kessie. And so there is some hope there for me that, we will be able to stop Rashford. I do wonder, depending on, if he does end up on that left wing, whether or not we put Araujo as the right back and then we switch Kounde centrally, because that is what we've done against Vinicius. That's worked well. So that should be interesting. I mean, do you have any thoughts about how that will play out in the game?
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. I hadn't actually thought about it, but that's definitely something to consider for Xavi. I mean, look, you're right. This is a test now for Barcelona. Barcelona, previous in times in Champions League, every time we've gone down to it, like you were saying, every time we've gone out, we've said, well, look at the defense. Not good enough, not physical enough, not quick enough, not strong enough. Can't compete against these sorts of top, pacey, strong, prolific European players. Now Barcelona have got a defense literally tailor-made for that. It doesn't get quicker and stronger than Kounde, Araujo, Christensen and Balde. And with Ter Stegen behind them, it really doesn't. And like you said, I mean, Busquets won't even be playing. So you've got physical and players and pacey players in De Jong and Kessie in midfield. So Barca really should be set up for this clash now. So this is a real test of fire to see whether they can pull it off. In terms of whether Rashford plays off the left or through the middle, I know that Man U prefer Rashford from the left. That's why Ten Hag has been starting Wout Weghorst up front. But Weghorst has been playing quite poorly, in my opinion. And actually, say Man U make a change in the game where they bring Garnacho off the left, for example, or Sancho off the left, and then move Rashford to the middle, I think instantly they play better. But it's just a case of they want Rashford in the best spot. So if Rashford plays off the left, I could see Xavi putting Araujo right back. I could also see Xavi just saying, hang on a minute, we haven't tried this out in a few games now, let's leave it and just keep the back four as it's been. But I'm expecting Barca to go the full strength lineup, actually, to be honest. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting conundrum that Xavi's going to have to make a good call about.
And it's interesting. You talk about Weghorst and how he hasn't played that well. I know he just thought he
Yeah,
had his goal yesterday in the Premier League, his first one for Man U, and it was called off for, I think, offside.
yeah,
Because I do feel like he's the type of profile. He's a huge, huge man and striker that we don't really see too much of in La Liga. And so I
yep,
do think, one of the interesting clashes that you get when you get, La Liga Premier League, La Liga League One, you get the different leagues competing against each other in European competitions. It's just different player profiles that aren't as popular. And so I was thinking to myself, Weghorst, even though he's not in the best of form, really presents a profile of a player who we haven't come across too much. Although, he'd likely be up against Christian mostly, and Christensen. And Christensen has played against a lot of big physical strikers in the Premier
yeah,
League himself, and so, and then Araujo himself. I mean, yesterday against Villarreal was just an absurd masterclass
yeah.
of defense on his end. Like you couldn't want, I think about this Villarreal game. And I think about how like the first half was really beautiful, and the second half kind of went to shambles a bit. And the only saving grace is really Araujo having that performance, because I really did want to see one of those, like kind of like Sevilla, where we score 2+ goals in the second half, kind of to give us that good energy going into this Man U game. We didn't have
Yeah.
that, but we did have Araujo shutting everyone out, so that was exciting. Well, so in terms of lineup, I mean, do you expect us to see the exact same we did against Villarreal? Because the Villarreal and Sevilla lineup, they were almost exactly the same, right? Once
Yeah.
Boosie got injured, we put on Kessie. But the one interesting thing was kind of how Xavi decides to set up the double pivot versus the two, other midfielders who are kind of inverted up front. And so against Villarreal, we really saw Kessie and Frenkie as that double pivot, Pedri and Gavi up front. Of course, we all know Gavi. I think that was his third goal in the last 5 La Liga games. He's won us 3-1-0 games so far in the last month, right, in La Liga. How do you expect us to line up? Do you think it'll be the exact same as Villarreal, or do you expect any adjustments?
I would go the exact same as Villarreal, and I think he will actually. I think we'll see, Ter Stegen in goal, Kounde, Araujo, Christensen and Balde. I think we'll do Kessie, De Jong, Pedri and Gavi, and then I think we'll do Raphinha and Lewandowski up front. The reason I say that is because Barcelona's game on the weekend is Cadiz at home, and then you've got the return leg against Manchester United. So I just think, and then after that, I think we've got Almeria and La Liga. So I think for the next 4 games now, it's almost throwing everything on Manchester United, and then for those other 2 La Liga games, just making 4 or 5 changes. Nothing too drastic, because obviously, we don't want to drop points there. That would be a disaster in itself. And I think honestly, La Liga is probably more important for Barcelona than the Europa League this season. I must say that. So if it gets to a point in terms of prioritizing, we probably want to go for La Liga. But I think because of the nature of the fixtures we've got coming up, I think Xavi will go full strength. My only worry is, and I don't know if you noticed this a bit last night, is I just feel that sometimes in attack, we didn't look as fluid or as engaging or as dynamic as we have done in the past with that forward midfield. You kind of got Raphinha down the right, who we kind of give the ball to and say, right, make something happen. And then other than that, I feel sometimes we look a bit stiff. With Lewandowski, we know he's not the paciest player. And I think maybe playing Manchester United, they're going to be set up well. They're not going to give us that many spaces, I don't think. So that almost poses a different question to Barcelona in terms of, well, are you actually going to create enough with the 4-man midfield? So you've got Ansu Fati on the bench, who Xavi might think he can bring in. Of course, got Jordi Alba there too, who we know provides a lot attackingly from left back. So there are some calls to make, but naturally I'd expect Xavi to go with the same lineup that we saw against Villarreal.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what you discussed, because there definitely was in the second half. It was almost
Yeah.
like we were trying to move too quick at times. There's really been a yo-yo for me with this Barca team, and we were kind of swinging from one extreme to the other. Like I think early in January, right, you saw us go up 1-0, and then the team would play extremely conservatively. We
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
try and win the game by control, which is really just, in my opinion, to mean win the game by doing the opposite of what got you the initial goal.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you play to score, and then all of a sudden you score, and then you decide okay, let's just try to hold on the ball more, which opens you up to a lot of counterattacks. Yesterday, I felt it was kind of on the other end of the pendulum, where we went up 1-0, and the team had been so hyped up by how smooth the connection between Lewandowski and Pedri
Yeah.
was, that they tried to recreate that magic, but just rush things, and it didn't work, right? And I think what's going to really be the key, and it kind of goes to what you're talking about with Jordi Alba, is if we do start Balde, he's really going to have an increased offensive mind, right? And I think over the
Yeah.
last 2 months, we have seen his offensive profile increase with his dribbles and his crosses. But one thing I noticed is with Kessie in that left part of the double pivot, that really gave Balde more freedom to move up. But it didn't seem like we were able to create as much. I think Gavi and Balde didn't provide as much of a unit as we saw, like Jordi Alba provide the other day against
Yeah.
Sevilla. And so, we have a squad of young players, right? It kind of goes back to my earlier point about how we've switched out that old block of Lenglet, Piqué, Alba, Busquets, etc. And so we have a lot of young players. And something I mentioned yesterday after the Villarreal game was, Lewandowski is undoubtedly, I think, the leader of this team along with Ter Stegen. And tomorrow, what's really going to be important for us is for him to lead by like actually finishing his opportunities, right? That is the main thing that I'm worried about, is that Lewandowski was not very clinical against Villarreal or against Sevilla. And, I actually haven't seen him be very clinical after he got that interrupted portion of play with that red card in the 3 games he was suspended. And so that's what we really need, right? Because you look back to the Bayern Munich game, the first game in the Champions League in Munich last season, and, Lewandowski, whether it was the nerves, whether it was his first big game against Barca, coming back to his old home, didn't put a goal in the back of the net. Pedri also missed an opportunity in that game. And so I'm hoping to see him level up and actually finish how we know he can, right? Because he's got a great record. He's leading the Pichichi race in La Liga. And if it's not going to be Lewandowski, right, Raphinha himself hasn't been able to score that much. And so can we really rely on Pedri to keep scoring, goals? And if that just one in a game, I mean, where do you think our best opportunity to really put goals on the board is in this game?
No, I mean, I think this is exactly it. This is kind of what I meant in terms of the 4-4-2, if you like, in a way for Barcelona. I don't see it as that optimal in attack in terms of blowing Man U away. Like, I'm expecting this tie to be settled within a goal, like maybe like 3-2 on aggregate or 2-1 on aggregate or like 4-3 on aggregate. And I think it's going to be nerve-wracking and tight for Barcelona, no matter what happens. So that's why I'm a bit nervous coming into this game, because like you say, I can't see this current Barcelona team, the way we're playing, blowing Man U away. Like, I'm not expecting 3-0 on Thursday. I'm really not. So I think for Barca, yeah, of course, they need Lewandowski to fire again. I think you're right. He hasn't been as clinical or as deadly as we've seen in the first moments of the season when he got the ball, I thought goal. It was pretty incredible. So, I remember the Victoria Pilsen game in the Champions League, or when he came off the bench against Cadiz away, for example, it was like, yeah, this guy's going to be a monster. And he's still been so good, of course, but it just hasn't been the same. We saw that last night again, the one-on-one with Reina in the first half. If that's in September, it's just a goal. And right now he's running through, and I thought, yeah, this isn't going in. So he's got that sort of feel about him right now. Raphinha, I think we know isn't always going to be the biggest source of goals, but I think he can be. He's more of a creator, I'd say, or someone who doesn't always have to get, output, but contributes a lot to the team. And then, of course, you've got the midfielders, like you said, maybe it is just in the case of, again, another 1-0 with Pedri, but that's going to make this a really, really nerve-wracking tie. So I think for Barcelona, they don't come into the game full of goals. And I think Man U will know that, and that's going to make it very tight.
So how do you think we square the circle here? Because, one of the interesting things that you bring up, right, is just this idea that the 4-4-2, or however you want to arrange that, the lineup we're running, but however you want to arrange it, it's not necessarily, it's a little bit paradoxical in a way, in my opinion, because certainly I think we would all agree, right? Frenkie De Jong, this is the best we've seen him play under Xavi, even under Koeman. You think about Balde, same with him. You think about Pedri and Gavi, they're at nearly their best performances I've seen. You think of our backline, it's so elite. And so we have, Xavi for the first time really showing the ability of his tactics to unlock the best potential of all of our players, which is really good. But we're still missing that last key. Do you think, is it in your opinion that it's just Dembele? Because I think that's a valid point. I'm a huge Dembele fan, and I really do think him up front compared to Raphinha is a huge change. Or do you think long-term this 4-man midfield just won't be the optimal play style?
Yeah, I think long-term it's probably going to be 4-3-3 for me. I actually do think that. I think this is working very well for Barcelona. They've got to adapt. Ansu Fati and Ferran Torres, who are kind of natural left wingers, if you like, aren't performing. So it makes sense when you've got Raphinha and Dembele, who are the 2 best performing wingers. They're both right wingers, to put all of the emphasis on that. So I think Barcelona are going to stick with it for a while. I think we'll probably use it, even once Dembele comes back. And even into next season as well, for example, in some moments. I think it's a really valid formation for Barca to use, especially when we've got so many, talented midfielders who are so good at, controlling the game and manipulating the ball. So I definitely think it's going to be something Barcelona keep using under Xavi. And of course, I think Dembele's a big miss. I think everyone knows that, he would scare the life out of Luke Shaw on Thursday. He would go right past him. So, of course, we know it's a big miss, but I got to say, I've been impressed with the way Barca have dealt with it. I was more worried before than I am now, for example, because I think Raphinha's come in and actually done a really good job, and I rate him very highly. So I think Barca are okay for now, but of course we know Dembele is a big miss, and Busquets will be a big miss too. And Man, that they're missing a few players themselves. Like you say, Lissandro Martinez being injured is huge, and I think Barca should make the most of it. I think Lewandowski has to make the most of it because he can bully any of their other centre backs. I know that for a fact. No Eriksen in a midfield is also big, but they've got some other players there and in attack too. So yeah, Dembele is a big miss as is Busquets, but I think for now the 4-4-2 will stay.
Yeah, me too. I do too. And I'm not sure about long term whether or not he's gonna switch back to a 4-3-3. I mean, we really in this topic's been beat to death here, but like we really just the Ferran Torres purchase has really put us into a weird position. And then Ansu, he needs patience to try and get back to his best. So and then the Dembele, Raphinha left and right wing experiment went on for 6 months and didn't get us as the level of play we have now. So that's for Xavi to solve for the future. But like you said, no Lissandro Martinez, no Eriksen for the first leg, no Busi, and probably no Dembele for Barca for both legs. So how do you see? What are your predictions for this first leg and the return leg?
I think it's going to be tight, like I've said. I don't like Barca going away in the second leg, probably because of what we've seen in the past in Europe. It just always leaves me with the feeling that we're not going to go through. But this Barcelona team has proven...
Pablo, come on, man.
No. I'm getting there. But this Barcelona team have been different this season. 2023, we've been really good away from home. We've won big games I didn't think we'd win. Atletico Madrid, you even look at the Super Cup games. You look at Real Betis away, Villarreal away. I'm sure I'm missing another one too. So it's been really, really good so far. And that makes me confident that Barca can hobble through. First leg, I'd go maybe like 2-1 Barcelona. And then second leg, maybe 1-1. And Barca would go through then 3-2 on aggregate. That sort of game I can see happening. What that would mean is, like I say, very nerve-wracking. I think if it's 1-1, second leg, and Barca defending crosses into the box to Weghorst for 10 minutes, it's going to be very nerve-wracking. But that's the nature of this game. It's going to be a tough tie. And the second leg at Old Trafford in Europe, that's going to be difficult. Barca are going to have to manage that, and they've proved so far, like I say, that they can do that. But now it's a real test.
Yeah, I mean, what's scary to me, and like I said, we're at the infancy. Hopefully, right? If things don't go a little bit bonkers here in the next 6 months, we're at the infancy of Xavi's time as manager, and it's the same thing for Man U with Ten Hag, right? Yeah. And so you have two managers who are leading clubs to return from a low point. Thankfully for Barca's case, it's only been like 2 or 3 years. For Man U, it's been like a decade ish, and, not really 5 years, but. You have two managers who really want to make their stamp on their new team and their new run. And, of course, you think back to the Champions League, 2 finals. You think back to when we played them, another time. And I think it was like the round of 16. And this is a historical matchup, Barca versus Man U. And so I'm curious to see who's going to win the battle, because we haven't seen Xavi really come up in these big legs of European competitions and win them, right? That's just not the honest to God truth. Now, we have seen him tremendously improve the team over the last 6 months, which gives me some belief that, this might be the one where he does win it and we'll see him kind of ascend as a coach into a higher tier. But Ten Hag, of course, he has got a great pedigree, and he's looking to do the same with a team that's on fire. And so I'm very nervous, but also excited. I think as a neutral, it's got to be a wonderful tie for you to watch. I really feel like it's going to be tight, like you said. I think, honestly, the first leg is going to be like a 1-0 affair for Barca. And then I think we go back to Manchester, and, I'm hoping we get something like a 1-1 tie and we go through that way. But, it should be very exciting. Just to remind you guys, this is Pablo Wools-Blanco at Pablo WB Official on Twitter. Don't worry, I'll have it up here. Pablo, I want to say thank you for coming on. I'm really excited for how this match plays out, and it's going to be a real hoot for all of us. So leave in the comments any thoughts you guys have about what we said, about predictions for the scoreline, starting lineup, what you want to see. Pablo, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on, man. I really enjoyed the chat. Big game for Barca, big time in our season, and really appreciate it.